The Cleveland Browns are no strangers to heartbreak. For decades, fans have learned to brace themselves for collapse at the very moment hope begins to flicker. And yet, what happened on one Sunday afternoon in Cleveland was unlike anything this tortured franchise had ever experienced. Not because of a last-second field goal, not because of a miraculous blocked kick, not even because of the defense rising from the ashes to give the team a chance. No, the story that erupted, the moment that lit up the NFL world, centered on a rookie quarterback who didn't throw a single pass. Shedeur Sanders didn't take a snap that day. He didn't scramble for a first down or deliver a highlight reel touchdown. On paper, his box score was a blank slate. And yet, by the time the final whistle blew, his name was trending across every social platform, his jersey was flying off shelves, and his presence had single-handedly reignited belief in a city that had all but given up. The question wasn't how the Browns had pulled off an improbable comeback against the Packers. The question burning through the league was far more unsettling. How does a fifth-round rookie, standing on the sideline with a headset, overshadow everything else that happened on the field? That's where this story begins. The Browns entered the fourth quarter flat, lifeless, and destined for another chapter in their long book of football misery. Veteran Joe Flacco had looked overmatched all day. The offense sputtered. Fans streamed toward the exits, shaking their heads, muttering the same old lines they've repeated for years. Same Browns, same heartbreak. The stadium atmosphere resembled a morgue more than an NFL battleground, but hidden in plain sight, something was brewing on the Cleveland sideline. Cameras caught Sanders packing like a storm about to break, jawing with teammates, chest-bumping defenders, and injecting a jolt of energy into a roster that looked ready to fold. And then, the impossible happened. A game-changing interception flipped the momentum. A blocked field goal set the stage for a miracle finish, and a rookie kicker of all people nailed the shot that saved the season. The Browns won, yes, but the viral footage that spread like wildfire wasn't the blocked kick or the game winner. It was Sanders himself, headset still on, leaping into the air, shouting at the top of his lungs, pointing to the heavens as if he were orchestrating destiny from the sideline. Within minutes, clips of his raw emotion spread across Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Fans who had been ready to abandon the season suddenly declared him the future. Analysts on national television opened their shows not by breaking down the game, but by breaking down Shedeur's energy. And for the first time in years, the Cleveland Browns weren't defined by despair. They were defined by possibility, because of a quarterback who didn't even step on the field. This isn't just a story about football. It's a story about charisma, leadership, and the kind of intangible force that can change a franchise forever. The Browns may have won a game, but what really happened that day was something bigger, the birth of the Shedeur Sanders phenomenon. For all the hype that surrounded Cleveland heading into that matchup, the game itself quickly turned into a nightmare. From the opening kickoff, it felt like the Browns had walked straight into a trap. The Packers came out sharp, executing crisp plays, while Cleveland looked sluggish, flat, and completely out of sync. Every possession told the same story: missed blocks, sloppy routes, and a quarterback who couldn't find his rhythm. Drives sputtered before they even began, ending in punts that drained the energy from the crowd. Fans who had filed into the stadium full of hope were already groaning by the end of the first quarter. By halftime, the scoreboard painted a brutal picture. Green Bay had turned turnovers into points, while the Browns struggled to put together even the simplest offensive sequences. Joe Flacco, the veteran supposed to steady the ship, looked rattled under pressure. His timing was off, his passes sailed, and his body language screamed frustration. The offensive line, once considered a strength, crumbled against the relentless pass rush. Every sack felt like another nail in the coffin, and every three-and-out sucked more belief out of the stands. But it wasn't just the offense. The defense, usually the Browns' anchor, cracked under the weight of constant pressure. Missed tackles piled up. The secondary blew coverages. A team that had prided itself on toughness and grit suddenly looked fragile, like the fight had been drained before the battle was halfway over. It was the kind of collapse that Cleveland fans knew too well, a script they'd seen written and rewritten for decades. As the third quarter rolled on, the atmosphere in the stadium turned sour. Boo birds rained down from the stands, and chants calling for change echoed through the air. Longtime fans muttered that familiar phrase, the one that has haunted this franchise for generations. Same old Browns. It didn't matter who wore the uniform or what coach stood on the sidelines. Somehow, someway, this team always found a way to fall apart. On the sidelines, you could see the frustration boiling. Players slammed helmets. Coaches barked at officials. The entire organization seemed on the brink of implosion, one bad play away from a total meltdown. And yet, hidden in that storm of chaos, one figure stood apart. Shedeur Sanders, the rookie most expected to simply observe and learn, paced with fire in his eyes. Unlike the veterans slumping on the bench, he looked wired, restless, like he was ready to take the field himself. But at that moment, no one cared about the rookie on the bench. The Browns were collapsing in real time, and everyone inside the stadium could feel the season slipping through their fingers. The scoreboard was ugly. The body language was worse. For fans who had spent years watching their teams snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, this was just another painful entry in the same old story, or so it seemed. Because what happened next would flip that story upside down, and it started with a spark no one saw coming. Just when it seemed like the Browns were destined for another collapse, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't sudden, more like a slow current moving beneath the surface, but fans in the stands and players on the field felt it. Green Bay had the ball, driving with confidence, ready to put the game out of reach. Then, in a moment that seemed to come from nowhere, the tide turned. A tipped pass at the line fluttered awkwardly into the air, and Cleveland's defense pounced. The interception wasn't just a turnover, it was a lifeline. For the first time all game, the crowd roared with genuine belief. Players on the sideline jumped to their feet, and suddenly the stadium had electricity again. Momentum, that elusive force the Browns had been chasing all day, swung violently in their direction. But the play itself wasn't the only thing that made it a turning point. Cameras caught Shedeur Sanders erupting in celebration, sprinting to meet his defensive teammates, firing them up like he had been waiting for this exact moment. His raw energy spread down the bench like wildfire. Offensive linemen slapped each other's pads. Receivers started bouncing, clapping, yelling. What had been a dead sideline just minutes before now looked alive, almost reborn. The Packers, rattled by the sudden surge, made mistakes of their own. A missed field goal gave Cleveland another chance, and the Browns seized it. Even though Flacco wasn't at his sharpest, the offense began to show flashes of life, feeding off the adrenaline that Sanders had injected into the team. Every completed pass, every hard run, felt like defiance against the narrative that Cleveland was supposed to fold. By the time the fourth quarter arrived, the energy inside the stadium had completely transformed. Fans who had been heading for the exit stopped in their tracks. They could feel it. Something different was happening. The Browns weren't rolling over this time. That interception was more than just a defensive stand. It was the crack in the wall, the opening that allowed belief to flood back into a franchise known for heartbreak. And leading that emotional charge, without even stepping on the field, was a rookie quarterback whose presence was impossible to ignore. The Browns had clawed their way back into contention, but no one in the stadium could have predicted the kind of ending they were about to witness. Down late in the fourth quarter, Cleveland needed something extraordinary. The Packers still held the lead, and the clock ticked away with cold precision. Every Browns fan watching knew how this story usually ended, with disappointment. Yet this time, destiny seemed to have other plans. The drive began with a spark. Flacco, battered all game, suddenly found a rhythm. A slant route connected for a first down, then another. The chains moved, the crowd grew louder, and for the first time all afternoon, the offense looked like it believed. Running backs fought for extra yards. Receivers stretched for impossible grabs. It wasn't pretty, but it was desperate, and desperation has a way of creating magic. Then came the play that changed everything. On 3rd and long, with pressure collapsing around him, Flacco heaved a prayer downfield. Somehow, against all odds, the ball found its target. The receiver twisted midair, hauled it in, and crashed to the turf inside the red zone. The stadium exploded. Suddenly, Cleveland was within striking distance. But miracles never come easy in this city. 2 plays later, disaster nearly struck. A fumbled handoff skittered across the grass, and for a breathless moment it looked like the Packers would recover. Somehow, the Browns fell on it, keeping the dream alive. The near miss only made the tension worse. Fans clutched their heads. Coaches screamed on the sidelines. Time was running out. And then, redemption. A bruising run up the middle set up a manageable field goal attempt. Out trotted the rookie kicker, a name most fans barely knew before the season began. The weight of the entire city rested on his shoulders. 40-plus yards stood between the Browns and a season-saving miracle. The snap came clean. The hold was steady. The ball soared into the cold Cleveland sky, carrying with it decades of frustration and the fragile hopes of thousands. Straight through the uprights. Good. The roar that followed wasn't just celebration, it was catharsis. Strangers hugged. Players collapsed in disbelief. Coaches threw their arms into the air. And standing near midfield, headset still on, was Shedeur Sanders, leaping higher than anyone, shouting louder than anyone, as if he had willed the ball through himself. Cameras caught him at the perfect moment, arms raised, face lit with fire, the embodiment of a city's relief. The Browns had won. Not just a game, but a moment that would echo for years. What looked like another Cleveland collapse had transformed into one of the most unforgettable finishes in recent memory. And though the kicker sealed it and Flacco steadied the drive, the image that defined the night wasn't theirs. It was Sanders, the rookie who hadn't taken a snap, somehow becoming the face of a miracle. Cleveland wasn't just alive in the standings. It was alive in spirit, and it all turned in the blink of an eye. The miracle finish was still echoing through the stadium when the internet took over. Within minutes of the game's final whistle, clips of Shedeur Sanders on the sideline flooded every corner of social media. ESPN barely had time to cue the highlights before Twitter and TikTok had already crowned him the star of the night. Not for throwing touchdowns, not for orchestrating the comeback, but for the raw emotion and unfiltered fire he brought to the sidelines. The footage was impossible to ignore. One angle showed him chest-bumping defensive linemen after the interception that turned the game around. Another clip captured him screaming encouragement into the face of a veteran receiver, his intensity radiating like a spark no one could put out. The most viral moment of all, Sanders leaping into the air with both fists raised as the rookie kicker's game-winning field goal sailed through the uprights. That image alone racked up millions of views before sunrise. Fans were stunned. Comment sections overflowed with excitement. "He hasn't even played a snap and I'm ready to buy his jersey," one wrote. Others declared him the true leader Cleveland had been missing for years. Even rival fans admitted something rare. This kid had it. The kind of charisma that couldn't be faked, the kind of energy that could flip a franchise's identity overnight. Sports media followed quickly. Morning talk shows opened not with breakdowns of strategy, but with debates about Sanders' impact. Was this just rookie hype? Or had the Browns stumbled into a leader who didn't need stats to change the game? Analysts couldn't agree on the answer, but one thing was certain. Everyone was talking about Shedeur Sanders. By the end of the night, hashtags with his name trended nationally. Memes poured in, edits circulated on Instagram, and reaction videos stacked up on YouTube. Sanders had become more than a rookie quarterback standing on the sideline. He had become a viral force. The Browns had pulled off a miracle win, but in the digital world, the story wasn't about the scoreboard. It was about the rise of a rookie whose presence, passion, and personality captivated millions without ever taking the field. The noise inside the stadium after the miracle win was deafening, but what happened once the Browns retreated to the locker room may have been even more important. In that cramped space beneath the stands, a team that had been on the verge of implosion suddenly felt reborn. Players who just an hour earlier were slamming helmets in frustration were now laughing, shouting, and dancing in celebration. The win mattered, of course, but the energy buzzing through the room had a new source. All eyes, somehow, kept drifting toward the rookie who hadn't thrown a pass. Shedeur Sanders didn't try to take the spotlight. He didn't need to. His teammates gave it to him. Veterans slapped his shoulder pads, young players dapped him up, and coaches nodded in quiet acknowledgement. Everyone had seen the way he carried himself on the sideline. Everyone had felt the way his fire spread like electricity through the roster when they needed it most. The Browns were supposed to lean on their veterans for leadership, but on this night, it was Sanders who had lit the spark. The locker room reflected that. When the music kicked on, he wasn't sitting quietly in the corner. He was in the middle of it all, shouting, clapping, and pushing everyone to soak in the moment. Teammates who had been divided by frustration earlier in the game now moved as one, bound together by the kind of emotional glue that stats and playbooks can't provide. Coaches took notice too. Kevin Stefanski, normally measured in his post-game remarks, hinted at the intangible impact Sanders had already made. "Sometimes leadership isn't about the field," he told reporters later. "Sometimes it's about presence, energy, belief, and tonight, Shedeur gave us all of that." For a rookie barely weeks into his NFL career, that was a remarkable endorsement. What made it even more powerful was the contrast. Just hours before, the locker room had been one of tension, anger, and disappointment, a team watching its season slip away. Now, thanks in large part to Sanders' fire, the room pulsed with life. Players spoke about refusing to quit. Veterans praised the younger guys for stepping up. And almost everyone, unprompted, mentioned the rookie quarterback who hadn't played but somehow felt like the heartbeat of the team. The Browns left that locker room not just with a win, but with a sense that something inside their culture had shifted. They weren't just a team trying to survive another long season. They had found a spark, and his name was Shedeur Sanders. For head coach Kevin Stefanski, the miracle win should have been a moment of relief. His team had pulled off the unthinkable, stealing victory from the jaws of defeat. But as he stood at the podium after the game, fielding questions from reporters, the narrative shifted quickly. The media wasn't just talking about the kicker's heroics or the late defensive stand. They wanted to know about Shedeur Sanders, the rookie who hadn't taken a snap but had somehow become the face of the night. That was the dilemma Stefanski now faced. On one hand, Joe Flacco was still his veteran starter, the quarterback with experience and poise in big moments. On the other, the locker room and the fans were buzzing about Sanders, a rookie with undeniable charisma and the kind of energy that couldn't be ignored. How long could Stefanski keep him on the sidelines without creating tension? How long before the chants of "We want Sanders" echoed louder than any game plan? Privately, coaches knew Sanders wasn't fully ready. He needed more reps, more polish, more time to adjust to the speed of the NFL. But leadership doesn't always wait for the perfect moment. His presence alone had already changed the team's morale, and the players were responding to him in a way that couldn't be taught. Stefanski had to weigh the risks, stick with the safe option in Flacco, or gamble on the rookie who seemed destined to lead.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button.
The pressure wasn't just internal. National media had already turned Sanders into a headline, with analysts debating if the Browns should hand him the keys sooner rather than later. Fans were convinced he was the answer. Stefanski, caught in the middle, understood the danger. Move too fast and risk derailing Sanders' development, move too slow and risk losing the locker room. It was the kind of decision that could define not just a season, but a career. Stefanski had guided Cleveland to one of its most thrilling wins in years, but in doing so, he had also unleashed a storm of expectation. And at the center of it all was Shedeur Sanders, a rookie who had made the head coach's job a lot more complicated. The morning after the miracle finish, it wasn't just Cleveland talking about Shedeur Sanders, it was the entire country. Sports networks led with his name, but it didn't stop there. Entertainment outlets, lifestyle blogs, and even mainstream news channels picked up the story of the rookie who stole the spotlight without taking a snap. Sanders wasn't just a football headline anymore, he was a cultural phenomenon. Social media had turned him into a symbol overnight. Memes of his sideline celebrations spread like wildfire, paired with captions about leadership, swagger, and the future of the NFL. TikTok edits racked up millions of views, showing Sanders packing the sideline, yelling encouragement and leaping in triumph. Fans began posting videos of themselves imitating his energy, calling it the Sanders effect. Suddenly, he wasn't just a player, he was a movement. National personalities piled on. Talk show hosts marveled at his charisma. Analysts compared his presence to legends who had changed franchises by sheer force of personality. Even celebrities outside the sports world chimed in, tweeting their support or reposting his viral clips. For a rookie still learning the playbook, the attention was staggering. What made the frenzy even more powerful was Sanders' background. As the son of Deion Sanders, Expectations had always followed him, but now the narrative was shifting. This wasn't just about being Dayan's kid anymore. This was about Shedeur carving his own identity, showing the world that his impact wasn't inherited, it was earned. Fans rallied behind the idea that he wasn't just stepping into his father's shadow, but building a spotlight of his own. In Cleveland, the cultural buzz turned electric. Jersey sales spiked. Billboards lit up with his name. Local businesses jumped on board, offering discounts tied to Sanders' growing legend. What started as a sideline spark had evolved into a movement that stretched far beyond football. For the Browns, this was uncharted territory. Rarely had a rookie captured the imagination of both the sports world and pop culture in such dramatic fashion. And for Sanders, the frenzy was only just beginning. His challenge now wasn't simply about football, it was about living up to the tidal wave of expectation that came with becoming a viral star. The frenzy around Shedeur Sanders didn't stop at fans and media. It spilled straight into NFL locker rooms across the country. Players, coaches, and executives all had something to say about the rookie who had dominated headlines without even taking a snap. And the responses painted a picture of just how disruptive his sudden rise had become. Around the league, veterans admitted they were impressed. Several star quarterbacks commented on his energy, calling it rare for a rookie to command that kind of respect so quickly. Defensive players who had once lined up against him in college warned the NFL not to underestimate his game, reminding fans that his leadership wasn't just show, it was backed by real talent. "The kid's for real," one NFC defender told reporters. "If he brings that fire onto the field, watch out." But not everyone was eager to crown him. Some league insiders rolled their eyes, dismissing the hype as overblown. To them, Sanders was still unproven, a rookie yet to face the grind of an NFL season. Anonymous executives leaked cautious quotes, saying the Browns risked rushing the process if they bent to fan pressure. That skepticism, though, only fueled the debate. Was Sanders a future star or just another flash of hype in a league that eats its young? Coaches across the league quietly studied the situation. Many understood the bind Stefanski faced, balancing a veteran starter with a rookie whose leadership had captivated both the locker room and the public. Some privately admitted they envied Cleveland's problem. After all, not every team has a young quarterback capable of shifting a franchise's energy before even stepping under center. Even NFL legends weighed in. Retired greats took to shows and podcasts, praising Sanders' intangibles and pointing out how rare it was to see a rookie create this level of buzz. For fans, that kind of endorsement carried weight. If the legends believed, maybe the hype wasn't just smoke. By the end of the week, one thing was clear. Sanders wasn't just Cleveland's story anymore. He was the league's story. Whether teams loved it, hated it, or simply watched with curiosity, everyone in the NFL now had their eyes on the Browns' rookie quarterback. As the Browns turned their focus to the upcoming matchup against the Detroit Lions, Cleveland was a city on edge. The week leading up to the game was unlike anything fans or media had seen in years. Normally, practice reports and injury updates dominated headlines. This time, every article, every clip, every tweet revolved around one name: Shedeur Sanders. Local media coverage hit unprecedented levels. Reporters camped outside practice facilities, eager to catch even the smallest interaction between Sanders and his teammates. Every throw, every gesture, every conversation was scrutinized, uploaded, and debated in real time. Social media buzzed constantly, fans dissecting his preparation, analyzing body language, and speculating on whether he might see the field against Detroit. It wasn't just sports coverage, it was a cultural event. Inside the locker room, the pressure was tangible. Teammates noticed the change immediately. Practices felt heavier, as though every rep carried the weight of expectation. Flacco's presence, once unchallenged, now faced a constant reminder. The rookie's energy had shifted the team's dynamic. Some veterans quietly expressed admiration, others wondered how Stefanski would manage the balancing act. Stefanski himself tried to maintain normalcy, but the circus around Sanders made it nearly impossible. He limited media access, controlled practice observations, and instructed coaches to focus players on fundamentals, all while navigating a growing storm of speculation. Even small comments about Sanders' role in meetings or on the field were amplified by fans and national media alike. Off the field, fan engagement soared. Merchandise sold out. Hashtags and fan campaigns dominated the discussion. Social media polls asked whether Sanders should start, generating thousands of responses within hours. Cleveland restaurants, bars, and... By the time Sunday arrived, Shedeur Sanders had already transformed the narrative around the Cleveland Browns. He hadn't yet thrown a pass in a regular season game, but his influence had reverberated through the stadium, the locker room, and the NFL itself. What started as a viral sideline celebration had evolved into a symbol of possibility, a reminder that leadership and passion can sometimes matter as much as talent on the stat sheet. For Browns fans, Sanders' emergence was a breath of fresh air after decades of disappointment. The franchise had been searching for someone to inspire belief, to reconnect the team with its passionate supporters. Sanders had done that before even taking the field in meaningful action. The stadium energy, the locker room unity, and the social media storm all pointed to the same truth. This rookie had a rare ability to capture hearts, to ignite imaginations, and to change culture overnight. Beyond Cleveland, Sanders had become a talking point for the entire league. Analysts debated his readiness, rival coaches adjusted game plans in anticipation, and media outlets dissected every gesture, every expression. Yet, amid the frenzy, the core of the story remained simple. A young quarterback, carrying the weight of expectation, demonstrated that leadership isn't always measured by numbers. It's measured by presence, by energy, by the way a single individual can lift an entire organization. The legacy moment wasn't just the viral clips or the social media metrics. It was the proof that the Browns had finally found someone who could unite the team and the fan base around something bigger than the scoreboard. Sanders' impact was immediate, undeniable, and inspiring. His journey, from a fifth-round pick to a viral sensation, highlighted the unpredictable magic of football and the power of authentic leadership. As the season continued, the question remained: how much of this promise would translate into on-field success? Regardless of the answer, Shedeur Sanders had already left a mark. He reminded Cleveland and the NFL that sometimes, the most lasting legacy is not just about what happens in games, but about the belief, energy, and hope a single player can bring. For a franchise starved for inspiration, that alone was a victory worth celebrating.
If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to keep up with all the drama, trades, and behind-the-scenes action in the NFL, then don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps this channel grow and lets us know you love this kind of content. And hey, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with your friends, your group chats, or anyone who loves football as much as you do. The more the conversation spreads, the better it gets. Most importantly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss when we drop fresh stories, wild rumors, or breaking updates that the mainstream media won't talk about.